If you're a Hurricanes fan like I am, you most likely follow Florida State to some extent. Like maybe you just look to see if they won, check the score real quick. I happen to watch every single Florida State game every week. And obviously, I love when they lose. I've told y'all before, I don't mind saying, like, I have an unhealthy dislike for Florida State. I don't like their logos. I don't like the coaches. I don't like anything about Florida State. I don't like the colors. I don't like anything about that school. So the thing about Florida State up to this point in this season is I do enjoy watching them lose. I love to see it. But it's almost getting to the point where it's almost not even fun anymore. Like it's almost too sad to laugh at this point. We've seen their quarterback go down. We see their coach on the sidelines looking like he's going to cry. It's almost looking bad, right? It's almost looking too bad to get enjoyment out of it. So today what I want to talk about is, first I want to talk about like just how bad Florida State is from like the game we just saw them lose, which was a North Carolina game. And then I want to talk about the program in general, some stuff that I've heard from fans and from the insiders of Florida State. Then I want to talk about some things that we should learn about this situation, things that our Hurricanes family can learn from this Florida State fiasco, disaster, dumpster fire. All right. So before we get into all that, my name is Jordan Harris. I'm your favorite host in the entire world, and this is Sports Truth. Please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. I will not ever ask y'all to pay for anything. The only form of payment that I will ask from you is your subscription. It costs you nothing, just a click of a button. If you feel like you've been entertained or if you feel like you learned something from this video, I'd appreciate it if you would simply like the video and then subscribe to the channel. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into some things that I noticed from the North Carolina game. And then I'll go to the overview of the entire program, which shocked me. And then I'm sure a lot of y'all will get quite a bit from the point where I'm talking about what we should learn from this. It's some shocking stuff that I heard about this program, the overview of it. But let's talk about North Carolina first. So for one, Florida State lost to North Carolina. They went to 1-8. I'm gonna say that again. Florida State is 1-8 on the season, which is it's hard to believe. I've seen, being a Hurricanes fan for over 20 years now, which makes me sound real old. But being a Hurricanes fan for over 20 years, I've paid attention to Florida State for all those years. I've also paid attention to Florida for all these years. Out of those three schools, Hurricanes, Florida, and Florida State, this Florida State situation is the worst that I've seen. And I've seen all three of these programs get into a bad dip. I've seen all three programs look real bad for a spell. This is the worst situation I have ever seen any of these three teams look. Ever. This is the worst. So, one, I'm going to give you two shocking things that I learned from Brian Smith at the, Locked On Seminoles podcast. I'm a big fan of Brian Smith. So, two things that I learned. The first thing was, in the third quarter of this North Carolina game, this stat blew me away. There was a point in the third quarter where, for the entire game up to that point, Florida State had 6 passing attempts. So they got off 6 passes. They only completed one of them. But they got off 6 passes, and they also had 6 sacks recorded. So I'm going to say that again. Florida State's quarterback was sacked 6 times. At the same time, during that point in the game, he had only thrown the ball 6 times. It's crazy. He was 1 for 6 and then was sacked 6 times. I don't care if it's the first quarter, second quarter, third, or the fourth quarter. If you have the same amount of sacks that you have passing attempts, you're going to lose the game. It's bad. Anyway, it's bad. You're probably going to lose the game if that happens. That's a nasty stat. The next thing I want to talk about, which was another crazy stat that I heard. The running back for North Carolina had more total yards than Florida State had combined. So I'm going to say that again. Florida State had 201 total yards, their entire offense, 201 yards. North Carolina's running back, Amarion Hampton, had 265 yards, rushing and receiving combined. So the running back for North Carolina outgained Florida State's whole team. It's nuts. Okay, that's just bad, bad, bad football. So now let's talk about the program. Some of the stuff that I've heard, like I said, from insiders, from fans, from just all over the place. This is where Florida State's program is and where it's heading. For one, I've watched Mike Norvell's post-game conferences these last 2 weeks. The man, the only way I can describe him is that he looks broken. Like he looks defeated. He seems, the best way to describe him, if my wife were to say, well, what did he look like? The best way I could describe it is he looks like he's speaking at his best friend's funeral when he's up on stage answering these questions. He looks like he has no answers. He looks like he does not want to be there. And he gives power to the phrase, relieve you of your duties. We've all heard that phrase before. But sometimes you'll hear a phrase on a certain day and it means more to you when you hear it that day. When I thought of that phrase today, relieve you of your duties, I'm like, that phrase makes total sense today. Because it looks to me like Mike Norvell would be thankful if the AD would fire him today. It looks like he just wants this cup removed from his hands. Like he's just done. Like, man, I'm stressed out. I'm overstimulated. I don't know what to do next. Please just take this from me. I'm done. Relieve me of this stress. Relieve me of these duties. I cannot do this anymore. That's how Mike Norvell looks to me. And like I said earlier, I despise Florida State. But it's looking so bad and so sad that it's almost, I can't hardly get any joy out of it because it's so bad. It's so bad. Okay, so the next thing that had my mind kind of spinning a little bit. Last week and the week before, I heard analysts, YouTube, people with YouTube channels. I saw people on 24/7 sports analysts on it. All these different talking heads. They were all saying the same thing. They're like, and this is last week and in like the 3 weeks before that, people were all saying the same thing. If Mike Norvell didn't have this crazy buyout, which is just under $600 million, if he didn't have this crazy buyout, he would get fired. That's what I heard everybody say. That's from the fans to everybody. If Mike Norvell didn't have this, he would be getting fired. What I heard this week that got my head spinning is everybody's now saying, I don't care what his buyout is. We need to figure out how to pay for that. Or not we. They need to figure out how to pay it. Because they're saying the time has come and gone. Mike Norvell has proven that he cannot do this job. He's not the man for it. He needs to go immediately. And I saw fans all over the comment section saying this. And that blew my mind a little bit because my thought process was, yeah, that buyout is crazy. Florida State cannot afford to do that. Maybe if you're, Oklahoma State or Texas A&M. Texas A&M got oil money like crazy. You can do that. You know what I'm saying? But Florida State can't afford to pay $65 million. So I'm like, he's going to get comfortable there, and they're going to just get comfortable with him, get comfortable with losing over the next few years because they can't afford to pay it. So now that I'm seeing all these analysts shift after this game, saying, hey, man, I know the buyout's crazy. I know I've been saying for the last few weeks we cannot pay this buyout, but it's time. Figure out how to pay it. It's gotten so bad that people are trying to come up with some type of group. I don't know what you would call this group, but they're trying to come up with some group that sends emails and letters out to donors so the donors will no longer pay money to Florida State. So the donors can start writing letters saying, I won't give you another dime until you fire Mike Norvell. That's how bad it's gotten over there. It's gotten that bad. So the last thing I want to talk about just with the program overall, just the overview of this program is Brian Smith is what he calls himself the overlord of recruiting for the ACC. That's his thing, is he is really keyed in on recruiting of just all the teams in the ACC. He made a statement that blew me away. He said he would not be shocked, he wouldn't even be surprised if Florida State brings in less than 10 players from high school, this year's recruiting class. Less than 10 players. Think about how nuts that is. Florida State, once known to be in the top 10 recruiting every year for multiple years, they have the potential of bringing in less than 10 players in their signing class. That is crazy. And just for reference, last year they had 23 players. The goal is to have about 25. That's the typical target. Like Alabama, Georgia, they typically bring in between 20 and 25 players. And most of them are 4- and 5-star players. Florida State is going to probably bring in less than 10 players. And they have survived on the transfer portal. But when you're losing like they're losing, and when the team is just giving up and quitting, and the coach is looking like he has no answers, what player is going to transfer into that program? Can you see somebody, a backup quarterback from Alabama, can you see them transferring to Florida State? Can you see the backup running back at Georgia transferring to Florida State? I can't see it. So that program, I'm telling y'all, it looks bad right now, but I suspect that it's going to look even worse next year. I'm telling you, I don't think if they win 3 games next year, I would be shocked. A lot of people are thinking, oh, they're going to get these young guys and they're going to get developed. I'm telling you, it's not happening. Unless they bring in a new coach and they just start all over, this roster is shot. The coach is done. It's a bad, bad, bad situation. And can you imagine how many players are going to transfer out of there this year? It's going to get, I'm telling you, it's going to get bad. But anyway, let's talk about this. If they did fire Mike Norvell, who do you think would end up getting replaced? Like, who would replace him? Who do you think Florida State would look at to replace him? And then tell me what coach would actually scare you if they replaced Mike Norvell. I'm going to tell you my 2. So I think they're going to be looking at Deion Sanders first. The reason why is because he's bigger than college football. Like, the man he's won Super Bowls and played in the World Series. Who can say they've done that? And then he's got the personality that's just huge. He played at Florida State. He didn't just play there, but he was, like, outstanding at Florida State. He's probably the best corner of all time, and he played at this school. And I think he's a decent coach. I can't imagine what he would do at recruiting if he was able to recruit at Florida State instead of having to pull people to the frozen Boulder, Colorado. Like, nobody wants to go to Colorado. Let's just be honest. No disrespect, but nobody wants to go there. So if he went to Florida State, I do think he could do some pretty good things there. Now I want to talk about the player or the coach. If they replaced Mike Norvell with this coach, I would actually be terrified. And that coach is Rhett Lashlee. And some of y'all going to say, he wouldn't do anything. I'm telling you, SMU is not like that. They haven't been like that since way back when people was running the football wearing jerry curls and goggles. Like, SMU ain't been like that for a long time. And right now, they look pretty good. They look pretty good. They look pretty scary to a whole lot of players. A whole lot of players, a whole lot of coaches, a whole lot of fans. They look pretty scary. So, if Rhett Lashlee is able to if he's able to turn SMU around as quickly as he did, it's hard for me to imagine him struggling at a program like Florida State where he can bring in even more top talent, not just the Miami Hurricanes leftovers. No disrespect, Brashard Smith. But it is, you know what I'm saying? Like, if Rhett Lashlee was able to bring in some high-quality talent, I think he could actually do some damage. I think his recruiting would go through the roof. I think his play calling, I just think he would do really well at Florida State. I think he would terrify me there. I'll just say that. And then the last thing about Deion Sanders, by the way, understand that all 3 of his kids are leaving this year. Like, and I do say 3, Shador, Shiloh, and then Travis Hunter. I call Travis Hunter his kid too because he acts like he is. So I think all 3 of them will leave this season. And I can't imagine Deion Sanders staying in Colorado after his kids leave. I'm sure once his kids go on, he's going to go somewhere else too. It only makes sense for him to go to Florida State if they offer. All right. So now, what should we learn from this whole situation? I want to talk about that. I think this is really important that we learn from this. I want to give a quick analogy about this, though, if you don't mind. So, I own 7 businesses. I've got about 120 employees. Okay. So, whenever you have 100 plus employees, the one thing that you do nonstop is interview people. I interview people all of the time. And that's people who have college degrees, master's degrees, who sell for me. That's people who are janitors in our businesses, who just graduated high school, all of that stuff. I interview nonstop. And when I started my business in 2015, so almost 10 years ago, just about. When I first started, my main focus was people's credentials. I'd want to know where you graduated from. I want to know what your grade point average was. I just wanted to know all that stuff. Let me know your credentials because that tells me how good of an employee you'll be, right? Eventually, I realized no, that's not the case because I hired people who have college degrees and all this stuff, and I say, this report is due by so and so. Make sure you get it done. And then on that day, they're calling me saying, oh man, I put in 8 hours. I'm tired. I can't really get this in. Can I get this in to you tomorrow? No heart, no passion. So now that's actually what I focus on. I focus on people's passion. I focus on what their why is. Why are they doing this job? Are they doing it just because I'm paying them? Or are they doing it because they focus on just having an expertise and putting forth their best effort at all times? Which one is it? Are you here for a paycheck or are you just bred to do this? So passion is far more important to me than credentials. All right, so let me start with that. The reason why I say that, the reason why I think that's really important is because it reminds me of Mario Cristobal's situation so much. There are people who, and if you don't know by now, I'm a huge Mario Cristobal fan. I have been since he's been hired. I believe he is the perfect hire. Like if I could create a coach, it would be Mario Cristobal, and I'll tell you why. For one, he's from Miami. He's born and raised in Miami. He played for the University of Miami. He won a national championship, multiple at Miami. So he doesn't just know what it takes to win. He's been a part of it. He's done it before, right? So he knows if you've done something before, then you know how to replicate that. You know what it takes. Also, he coached under the greatest football coach of all time, in my opinion, Nick Saban. So that's another feather in his cap. The next thing, he's one of the best recruiters in the entire nation. He's won top recruiter of the year awards before. Like that, he's that good at recruiting. Okay? I'm not just saying he's really good as a head coach recruiter. I'm saying there's certain people on teams, these college teams, who all they do is recruit. Not all they do, but their main job is recruiting. Mario Cristobal was that at Alabama. He was their main head recruiter. Now he's brought that experience onto the Miami Hurricanes. He's the coach, but he knows how to teach the folks around him about what works in recruiting, what he's done. It's the perfect fit. Another thing, he knows the area. He understands if he can keep all these players from Florida at Miami, if he can keep all these players from Florida and bring them to Miami, he knows he can win. So he's focused on that. And then the most important thing about all of this, the most important thing is that he is at his dream job. What does that mean? That means he's passionate about what he's doing. He's not here for a paycheck. He's not here because he wants to see his name on the billboards. He's here because he's passionate about the University of Miami, because he grew up there, because he played football there. He loves the program. He watched from afar the program just dip into the ground and look horrible. And he has a passion for seeing it grow to where he knows it should be. Part of why that is so important is because y'all see it all the time, man. You see these coaches go to, let's say, Florida. Let's just say they go to Florida State, and they do really well there. And then Alabama comes calling, and they're like, hey, man, I got to get out of here. Or let's just give a real example. Jimbo Fisher, he's at Florida State. It's not his dream job. He's at Florida State. It's going really well. He's won a national championship. And then he gets offered some huge bucks at Texas A&M. And he's like, hey, y'all, I'm getting on out of here because Texas A&M is calling. If Florida State was Jimbo Fisher's dream job, if he was passionate about that job, he never would have left. And I honestly believe if Alabama called Cristobal right now and said, we're going to offer you this job, he'd be like, no, thank you. This is where I want to be at. So instead of focusing on credentials, I heard people saying, oh, let's bring in Kiffin. I can't stand Kiffin. But I kept seeing people say, let's get rid of Cristobal and bring in Kiffin. I'm like, look, Kiffin would come here for a cup of coffee, and as soon as a different program called him, he would jump out and go somewhere else. Why would you want somebody like that? Why would you get rid of somebody who's passionate and doing a pretty good job? Why would you get rid of that person and bring in somebody who's just an opportunist? It doesn't make sense. So we've got to focus more. Like, people are mad at Mario Cristobal about time management and stuff like that. When you're a young head coach, because he hasn't been a head coach for too long. So when you're, especially at this level, when you're a head coach at this level, you got to give people a chance to learn in the program, right? You got to give people a chance to learn on the job. And that's like that Georgia Tech game that we lost. It sucked. It was bad. But I wasn't killing Mario Cristobal because I was like, look, we're not winning the national championship that year anyway. You might as well go ahead and learn some things through trial and error, and it won't happen again. And what did y'all see happen this year? He kneeled on the ball to win the game. It's a learning experience. So that's just the way I view things. It's not about credentials anymore. It's not about how much of this or how much of that have you won. I'm more about finding people who are passionate about what they do. And then if you find that person that's passionate, like we found in Mario Cristobal, you can teach him the rest. Okay? I'm telling you, that works in business, it works in football, it works in whatever you want to do. If you're looking for a partner in something, look for somebody. Maybe they don't have all the credentials that you wish they had, but the first thing you should do is focus on them having a whole lot of passion, and you can teach them the rest. Passion will carry them through everything else. Just make sure they got the passion part first. All right? So those are some things that we definitely should be learning from this situation, because Mike Norvell came in. He had a decent name from Memphis. He jumped into this Florida State situation, and then all of a sudden people are saying, oh, man, Mario Cristobal's not doing so well. Look how well Mike Norvell's doing over there. Look how well Kiffin's doing over there. I wish we had him. I wish we had him. And I'm like, man, the grass is not always greener on the other side. The grass is always greener where you water it. So we just got to make sure that we stay focused on what we have, appreciate what we have. Our coach is passionate about what he's doing. He wants to be where he is. He doesn't have his eyes elsewhere. He's learning last year, he learned on the job like crazy. He brought in a time management guy. Like, he's doing the things that we need him to do. He's got the passion, and but we've been teaching him along to learn everything else, and it's going pretty well. So please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. We have been growing pretty quickly. A lot of positive comments, so I appreciate that. As I always say, like my man Jay-Z once said, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I truly appreciate that. So take care. God bless. Peace.